Council and Commission statements, conclusion of the European Council meeting of the 26th and 27th of October 2023, and the European Council and Commission statements, humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the need for a humanitarian pause. And I would like to give the floor now to the President of the Council, Monsieur Charles Michel. S'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le Président en exercice du Parlement européen, Madame la Présidente de la Commission, Mesdames et Messieurs, chers collègues, ladies and gentlemen, nothing can justify the terror and cruelty that Hamas unleashed against the people of Israel on October 7th. Over 1,400 innocent men, women, and children slaughtered, and over 240 people taken hostage. And Hamas brutality does not stop there. In Gaza, they are using innocent civilians, their own people, as human shields. One thing is absolutely certain: we can never let such a terrorist attack happen again. Countering Hamas will take more than military might. It will require a strong coalition of regional and global actors banding together with one common cause to fight terrorism. Hamas must not have any future in governing Gaza. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we support Israel's right to defend itself, and it must be done in line with international humanitarian law. The EU stands unequivocally for the protection of civilian life. Each civilian life matters, always and everywhere. A total siege is not in line with international law. We call for humanitarian pauses and corridors in Gaza because humanitarian aid must get to those in need urgently. And the more the situation deteriorates, the harder it will be to work towards a lasting peace in the future. With each passing hour, more lives are broken, more families torn apart. We must work, and we are working, to help alleviate the suffering. And I especially commend France, Greece, Cyprus, and some others for their concrete actions, like a maritime hospital and a maritime corridor. And at the meeting in Paris tomorrow, we will discuss and decide more support. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we must not lose sight of the bigger geopolitical picture. The EU can help the Middle East while also continuing its strong support for Ukraine for as long as it takes. Both regions need our continuous involvement. And that's why I propose that the EU purchase grains from Ukraine and ship them to those in need in the Middle East. This is a strong gesture of solidarity and efficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, Israelis and Palestinians both have the right to a peaceful and stable tomorrow. So we must have a vision for what comes next, a vision for what tomorrow could look like. And I'm absolutely convinced with all of you that we must bring back the prospect of lasting peace in the region. And let's be honest, for years, huge amounts and efforts have been pumped into security, but not nearly enough has been invested in peace, and even less into justice and reconciliation. And this approach did not work. Peace means security, but security does not always mean peace. One without the other only feeds more instability for both Israelis and Palestinians alike. The EU, we have a responsibility to help these nations move forward and to put into action a plan for security, a plan for prosperity in the region. And this plan must be based on the two-state solution: a safe and secure Israel and an independent Palestinian state. The Palestinians have the right to a stable political future with a government that has the interest of its people at heart and with a vision for a sustainable economic future. The Palestinian Authority will be key to any future political settlement. And we, the EU, we are the main donor to the Palestinian Authority, and we must continue our strong support, because supporting a credible and legitimate Palestinian Authority is an investment in peace and security in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a role to play in building peace in the region through our diplomacy, through our convening power, our common foreign security policy instruments, and our role as a trusted global partner. The EU was born from the ashes of war, a peace project based on reconciliation. And in these dark days of violence and conflicts, it's never too early to talk about peace, to be obsessed by peace. High Representative Borrell launched the Peace Day Effort Initiative in September in the margins of the UN General Assembly, together with Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the League of Arab States, and with some 50 countries from around the world. This initiative must be expanded, getting our member states and other partners, like the US, involved. We will work with all those who believe in peace and want to work together to fight the poison of extremism. And our efforts will be linked with the normalization efforts already underway, because the EU is by nature a global actor. We will take the lead with others in organizing as soon as possible a peace and normalization conference inspired by previous peace initiatives and the Abraham Accords. Lasting peace in the region will require peace between Israelis and Palestinians, and between Israel and all its neighbors. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, at this European Council meeting, we also discussed the consequences of this conflict for our societies within the European Union. And we are seeing a spike in anti-Semitism. We condemn this in the strongest possible terms, because they go against everything we stand for in Europe. Discrimination and intolerance have no place in our family of nations. And we will always stand against racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of discriminations. That's why we have tasked our ministers to coordinate and take all appropriate action and measures in this respect. Mesdames et messieurs, chers collègues, ce Conseil européen a aussi été l'occasion de se concentrer sur notre soutien résolu à l'Ukraine. Et d'un mot, le message principal, c'est soutien. Soutien résolu, soutien sans faille et soutien aussi longtemps que nécessaire. L'Ukraine est au cœur de nos priorités. C'est d'ailleurs le message clair que nous avons adressé au président Zelensky, qui nous a rejoints de manière virtuelle lors de notre réunion. L'Ukraine réalise des progrès significatifs sur la voie de l'adhésion à l'Union européenne. Le peuple ukrainien doit être certain qu'il dispose d'un avenir sûr et qu'il doit être prospère, garanti au sein de l'Union européenne. La Commission européenne vient de soumettre un rapport sur l'élargissement et il appartiendra au Conseil européen en décembre de décider quelles seront les prochaines étapes, aussi bien pour l'Ukraine que pour les autres candidats à l'adhésion. Une chose est claire, nous souhaitons continuer à soutenir l'Ukraine. Nous avons déjà fourni près de 83 milliards d'euros d'aide à l'Ukraine. Nous continuerons à soutenir l'Ukraine sur le plan financier, sur le plan militaire, aussi bien sur le plan européen que sur le plan bilatéral. Mesdames et messieurs, cette réunion a aussi été l'occasion de discuter la révision de notre budget européen. Il est certain, nous le mesurons tous, que lorsque nous avons adopté ce budget en 2020, le monde était très différent. Ces débats étaient nécessaires, ces débats sont utiles. L'Ukraine, vous l'avez compris, est une priorité absolue pour ce budget. Et nous aurons encore dans les prochains jours de plus amples discussions sur les autres éléments de priorité, la migration, la sécurité et la défense, ou encore, par exemple, les questions de solidarité en cas de catastrophe naturelle. Nous voulons toutes et tous que notre Union soit forte, prospère et capable d'atteindre nos objectifs communs dans des temps tellement troublés, dans des temps tellement complexes. Et la présidence espagnole sera chargée de faire avancer les travaux sur base des orientations du Conseil européen. Et le moment venu, le Conseil européen aura à délibérer sur ce sujet. Mesdames et messieurs, l'économie, la compétitivité, renforcer nos bases technologiques a aussi était l'objet de nos travaux avec Pascal Denouhou et Christine Lagarde qui nous ont rejoints pour le sommet de la zone euro. Nous sommes tous déterminés à travailler sérieusement pour renforcer la base économique à court terme, à moyen terme, à long terme de l'Union européenne. Nous savons par exemple qu'il s'agit de remédier aux défis liés aux pénuries de main-d'œuvre. Il s'agit de mettre en place des réglementations qui permettent à nos économies de se développer et d'être davantage compétitifs sur la scène globale. Nous devons aussi garantir notre sécurité énergétique. Nous avons progressé, c'est vrai, depuis cette invasion de la Russie contre l'Ukraine, mais nous devons être modestes et nous devons reconnaître que nous sommes toujours confrontés aujourd'hui à des prix de l'énergie qui sont jusqu'à 4 fois plus élevés que ceux de nos concurrents. Ça pose évidemment un défi très grand pour nos entreprises. Troisième point, les travailleurs, l'emploi, le marché du travail. Le taux de chômage n'a jamais été aussi bas, mais trop de jeunes encore n'ont pas accès au marché du travail. On doit remédier et garantir qu'il y ait davantage de possibilités d'accès à des emplois de qualité. De la même manière, on doit créer les conditions pour une plus grande participation des femmes au marché du travail. Enfin, il y a un quatrième point que nous avons mentionné, c'est l'investissement. Si nous voulons suivre le rythme, nous devons augmenter nos investissements dans les technologies stratégiques, dans les technologies d'avenir, mobiliser davantage le secteur privé pour atteindre les objectifs. Vous le voyez, nous sommes confrontés à des défis pressants. Nous devons les relever avec sang-froid et avec détermination. Nous sommes prêts à travailler avec vous pour atteindre ces objectifs. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, President Michel. The next speaker is the European Commission President, Madam Ursula von der Leyen. Please.
Thank you, Vice President Marc Angel, President Charles Michel, honourable members. The pain of innocent civilians in the Middle East shakes the conscience of the world. The situation on the ground is evolving fast, so let me focus on the work we have done since the October European Council to fulfil this mandate. The essential starting point continues to be what happened on the 7th of October. There is no justification for the horror that Hamas unleashed against innocent men, women, children, babies. Israel has the right to defend itself in line with international law and international humanitarian law. Supporting Israel is essential, but so is aiding and protecting civilians in Gaza. The death toll and the suffering of Palestinian civilians is tragic. There are images we cannot unsee. This shakes us to the core, all of us. So while Israel has the right to fight Hamas, it is also essential that it strives to avoid civilian casualties and to be as targeted as possible, because every human life matters, be it Israeli or Palestinian. Let me update you on our humanitarian work. 2 weeks ago, we had already tripled our aid to Gaza. This week, I have announced that we are further increasing humanitarian aid by another 25 million euros, bringing thus the total support to 100 million euros. And we are working hard for this aid to reach Palestinians. Convoys are now entering Gaza through the Rafah border crossing, but the volume remains too small to match the massive humanitarian needs. This is why we are working on a maritime corridor from Cyprus. It would guarantee a sustained, regulated and robust flow of aid. I very much welcome the excellent cooperation with President Nikos Christodoulidis and his government. This can make the difference between life and death for thousands of Palestinians, and we will continue to help evacuate EU citizens and injured Palestinians. Honourable members, as we deal with the urgency of today, we must also make the effort to think about tomorrow, how to break the current spiral of violence, and how hope can be restored for Israelis and Palestinians. They need a political perspective, and the perspective is the two-state solution. Of course, in the end, Israelis and Palestinians will have to agree on a way forward. But we, as part of the international effort, we must contribute, and of course in close cooperation with our friends and our partners. I believe 5 principles for the day after could help build some common ground. First, Gaza can be no safe haven for terrorists, and different ideas are being discussed on how this can be ensured. Second, the terrorist organization Hamas cannot control or govern Gaza. There should be only one Palestinian Authority and one Palestinian state. Third, no long-term Israeli security presence in Gaza, because Gaza is an essential part of any future Palestinian state, and the territory of Gaza cannot be reduced or amputated in any way. Fourth, no forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. This would be a humanitarian tragedy and also a recipe for more regional instability. And finally, no sustained blockade of Gaza. Any future Palestinian state must be viable, also from an economic point of view. And Europe stands ready to work with all people and countries in this region to make this happen. I know that all of this may look overly ambitious as the war rages on, but I think we must spare no effort to keep the hope alive, to find a lasting solution based on 2 states living side by side in peace and security. It is again time for an international effort towards peace in the Middle East, and we Europeans must play our role. Honourable members, the European Council also focused on Ukraine. I was in Kyiv a few days ago. In recent weeks, I had also the chance to visit all the Western Balkan countries, as well as Moldova, and how different these countries are, they all share one feeling. They feel they belong to the European Union. There is a new level of vision and ambition in aspiring EU members. They are ready to work even harder to join our union. And here in the union too, there's a new sense of urgency to unite our European family. Today, it is clear that the stability of every country in our continent affects, of course, also our own stability. Their security is our security. And if our union isn't fast enough in bringing candidate countries closer, others will fill the vacuum. But it is in our geopolitical interest to complete our union to make it stronger than ever. And it's not only about geopolitics. It's, of course, also about economics. The completion of our union will make the new member states' economies grow. It will make EU companies grow. It will also make our single market grow, making Europe an even more attractive and stronger partner in the global stage. Prosperity is not only shared by enlargement, it is multiplied. Enlargement is in our common interest. So we must seize this moment of opportunity to advance as much as possible towards the completion of our union. And today, we presented the enlargement report, and let me briefly summarize some results. First, on Ukraine, we are recommending to the Council to open accession negotiations. The progress that Ukraine has made as it fights an existential war is remarkable and impressive. With very clear achievements on all 7 steps we have identified, well over 90% of those steps have been completed. The remaining reforms are on their way. So by March 2024, we will report back to the Council on these ongoing reforms in order to have everything ready to finalize the negotiating framework. Very clear. The future of Ukraine is in our European Union, and this future has just begun. We also see Moldova with its bold efforts to come closer to us. And this has to be seen against the backdrop of a war in the neighboring Ukraine and of massive Russian interference. Therefore, the report highlights the significant reforms Moldova has undertaken. We also recommend to open accession negotiations with Moldova, and here too some remaining measures are to be finished, and the Commission will report to Council on this by March, and on this basis the Council could then finalise the negotiating framework. For Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Commission recognises a number of positive political and legal steps. For example, the swift entry into office of a new Council of Ministers in January of 2023. You can see that this has brought positive results. There is progress in the fight against organised crime, in the fight against money laundering and terrorism, for example. But we also note with concern the various unconstitutional laws adopted by the representatives of the Republika Srpska entity. So against this backdrop, the Commission recommends to the Council the opening of accession negotiations once the necessary degree of compliance with the membership criteria is achieved. And here too, the Commission will report to the Council on progress by March 2024. Finally, Georgia. We see the European aspiration of the overwhelming majority of its citizens. And while these aspirations need to be better mirrored by the authorities, and while further progress is needed on the 12 priorities identified last year, the Commission also acknowledges a number of positive steps, and we should encourage Georgia to move on. So the Commission recommends here to grant candidate status to Georgia on the understanding that the government takes important reforms. Honourable members, today's package is not only a snapshot of the situation on the ground, it can and it must be a driver of change. Since the very beginning of the mandate, I have deeply believed that we needed to reboot the enlargement process, in particular with the Western Balkans. So roadblocks and vetoes were hampering the progress towards the European Union. Instead, we should look at every country, how it is able to advance on the association path based on its own merits. Every new achievement should lead them closer to us. And with our new growth plan that we also presented today, we are setting out very clearly more for more. You open your borders in your common regional market, we open our single market in 7 very important sectors. You do the reforms for a level playing field for your companies to access the single market. We come with investment to help you to implement these reforms. So, honourable members, it is every country's responsibility to turn the page and make the strategic choice for Europe. And of course, in parallel, we, the European Union, also need to lay the necessary internal groundwork on reforms. In other words, let's get to work. Long live Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President von der Leyen. And the first speaker is Mr. Siegfried